The first cow died on a Tuesday morning, and nobody knew why. Ray Coldwell found her lying in the north pasture, legs stiff, eyes open to the sky. She hadn't been sick. She hadn't been old. She'd been drinking from the same creek she'd been drinking from her whole life. By Thursday, there were 3 more. Ray was 61 years old. He'd run this ranch since he was 19, when his father handed him the deed and told him never to sell, no matter what anyone offered. For 42 years he'd kept that promise, but now his herd was dying, and he didn't know why. He called the vet first. She ran blood tests, checked for disease, checked for poison plants, checked for everything a rancher fears. Nothing matched. The animals weren't sick. They were dehydrated, badly dehydrated, like they hadn't had water in days. That made no sense. The creek ran right through his land. It always had. So Ray walked the creek bed himself, boots sinking into dry mud that should have been wet. And that's when he saw it. The water was barely a trickle. Where a strong, steady current used to run, there was almost nothing left. Just a thin line of water crawling over stones that hadn't been dry in 50 years. Something was taking his water, and he had a pretty good idea who. He called his neighbor, Frank Delgado, who ran cattle 2 properties over. Frank had seen survey trucks driving up the old logging road weeks earlier, trucks with out-of-state plates and equipment Frank didn't recognize. "Didn't think much of it," Frank admitted. "Figured they were putting in a driveway or something." "They weren't putting in a driveway," Ray said. Frank drove over that same evening, and the 2 men stood at the fence line together, watching the thin, pitiful stream crawl past their boots. "That's not natural," Frank said quietly. "I've lived here 30 years. I've seen droughts. This isn't a drought." Ray nodded slowly. He already knew where the trucks had been headed. 6 months earlier, a man named Callum Reyes had bought the old Whitfield property upstream. Reyes wasn't a rancher. He wasn't even from this state. He was a tech founder, the kind of man who sold an app for more money than Ray would see in 10 lifetimes, and decided he wanted a ranch retreat for weekends. He'd built a mansion up there, glass walls, a helicopter pad, and, according to the neighbors, an enormous swimming pool shaped like a lagoon, big enough to need its own filtration system. Ray had met him once at the property line, when Reyes had his crew put up a fence that crossed onto Ray's land by almost 10 feet. Reyes had smiled that day, a big, easy smile, the kind that made you think he'd never been told no in his life. "We'll get that fence sorted," he'd said. "Good to meet you, neighbor." He never sorted the fence, and now, it seemed, he hadn't just taken 10 feet of land. He'd taken the water. Ray drove up to the property that same afternoon. The gate was electric, with a keypad and a camera mounted above it. He pressed the intercom button and waited. A voice crackled through, young, bored. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak to Mr. Reyes. It's about the creek." There was a pause. Then the gate buzzed open, just enough for Ray's truck to pass through. He found Reyes by the pool, and there it was, the whole story, laid out in front of him like a crime scene. Crystal blue water, glowing under the afternoon sun, more water than Ray's entire herd would drink in a month. "Mr. Coldwell," Reyes said, not even standing up. "What can I do for you?" "My cattle are dying," Ray said. "The creek's almost dry. It runs from your land onto mine, and it's never been like this before." Reyes took off his sunglasses, slow, like he had all the time in the world. "I had my engineers put in a small diversion," he said. "For the pool system. Nothing major." "Nothing major," Ray repeated. "I've lost 4 cows this week." Reyes shrugged. Actually shrugged like Ray had told him he was out of milk. "Water rights are complicated," he said. "My lawyers looked into it. Technically, the creek originates on a section of land I now own. I'm well within my rights. That creek has run through my family's land since 1891, Ray said. There's no version of technically where you get to kill my herd." Reyes stood up then, finally, brushing invisible dust off his shorts. "I'll have my team look into a compromise," he said. "But, Mr. Coldwell, I paid $12 million for this property. I think I've earned the right to enjoy it." He walked away, just like that. Left Ray standing at the edge of a pool that held more water than his family had used in a decade, while his cattle dropped one by one back down the hill. That night, Ray didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table with his father's old ledgers spread out in front of him, water rights documents older than the state itself. He was 61 years old, and, for the first time in his life, he felt truly powerless. Until his daughter called. Casey Coldwell had left the ranch at 18, gone to law school on scholarships and grit, and now worked for the state's environmental division. She hadn't been back home in almost a year. But when Ray told her what was happening, something in his voice must have carried, because she was on a plane the next morning. She walked the creek with him. She photographed the dry stones, the cracked mud, the exact point where the water dropped from a stream to a trickle. She pulled up satellite images on her laptop, comparing rainfall patterns from the last 5 years. "This isn't drought," she said quietly. "This is diversion, deliberate diversion." "He said his lawyers cleared it," Ray told her. Casey almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Water rights in this state don't work like real estate," she said. "You don't get to decide what's yours just because you bought the land it happens to run through. There's a whole legal doctrine here, Dad. Prior appropriation. First in time, first in right." Meaning what? Meaning our family had documented water rights to this creek before Reyes was even born. It doesn't matter who owns the land upstream. If we can prove continuous use, since before his purchase, he's the one breaking the law, not you. For the first time in weeks, Ray felt something other than dread. Still, hope wasn't proof, and proof was what they needed most. That evening, Casey sat at the same kitchen table where Ray had spent his sleepless night, except now the ledgers were spread out in a different order, organized by year, by permit number, by anything that might connect the dots. "This could take weeks," she warned him. "Water rights cases move slow. Government offices move slower." "We don't have weeks," Ray said. "I'm losing an animal every couple of days." Casey looked at him for a long moment. Then she closed her laptop and picked up her phone instead. "Then I'm not doing this the slow way," she said. But proving it wasn't simple. They needed records, old irrigation permits, witness statements from neighbors who remembered the creek's flow going back decades. Casey worked for 3 straight days, barely sleeping, pulling files from the county archive, cross-referencing them with state water board filings. And then she found it. A permit, filed in 1953 by Ray's grandfather, granting the Coldwell family senior water rights to the very creek in question. Rights that predated any structure on the Whitfield property by over 60 years. Reyes wasn't just morally in the wrong, he was breaking state law. Every single day, his pool filled up. Casey filed an emergency complaint with the state water board that same afternoon. Within 48 hours, An investigator was on site, measuring flow rates, inspecting the diversion pipes Reyes's crew had installed without a permit. The investigator's face, Ray would later say, was the most satisfying thing he'd seen in years. "This entire system is unpermitted," the investigator said, standing at the edge of the illegal intake valve. "And given the senior rights documentation your daughter provided, this diversion is in direct violation of state code." 3 days later, Reyes received a cease and desist order, along with a fine that made even a tech millionaire wince. The diversion pipes were ordered removed within 72 hours. Ray watched from his truck as the crew tore out the very system that had nearly destroyed his herd, dismantling it piece by piece under the eye of a state official. Reyes didn't come out to watch. He stayed inside his glass house, curtains drawn, while the water slowly, gradually, began to return to the creek. It took almost 2 weeks for the flow to fully recover. Ray watched it every single day, walking the creek bed morning and evening, watching the water climb back over the stones, filling the pools where his cattle used to drink without a second thought. He lost 6 animals in total. 6 animals that never should have died. All because one man believed money could buy him around 130 years of law. It couldn't. Reyes eventually sold the property. Quietly, without any fanfare, less than 4 months after the fine was finalized. Word around town was that a rich man who can't have the water he wants doesn't stay in a place very long. Frank stopped by a week later, leaning against the fence post like he had 100 times before. "Told you it wasn't natural," he said, watching the current move steady and full again. "You did," Ray admitted. "Wish I'd listened sooner." "You listened plenty fast for a stubborn old rancher," Frank said, grinning. "Your daughter's the one who really got it done, though." Ray couldn't argue with that. Ray never got an apology. He didn't need one. What he got was something better. His daughter, standing beside him at the edge of the creek, watching the water run clear and strong for the first time in months. "You didn't have to come back for this," he told her. Casey smiled, watching the current pass over the stones. "Yes, I did," she said. "This creek's been in our family for 4 generations. I wasn't about to let some guy with a helicopter pad decide otherwise." Ray looked at his daughter, then at the water, then at the herd grazing peacefully on the hillside behind them, healthy, hydrated, and alive. Some things, he realized, money simply cannot buy. And some rights, no matter how old, are worth fighting for until the very last drop. The following spring, Ray added a small plaque near the creek, right where the water first crossed back onto his land. It didn't say much, just a date and 4 words, "The water remembers too." Frank still stops by most weeks, same as always. Casey visits more often now, though never quite as long as Ray would like. And the herd, all of it, grazes exactly where it always has, healthy and unbothered, drinking from a creek that belongs to them, now and forever. If this story moved you, if you believe justice still means something in this world, make sure you subscribe to Forgotten Farm Tales. There are so many more stories like this one, waiting to be told.